The Menu All-Star Podcast here. Your girl Star Smith. I hope everybody's having a great start to their weekend. It is an absolute pleasure to come before you this Friday night. We've had a lot of great feedback, so I wanted to do a little recap of that feedback. And then I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about different things that have been swirling, different conversations that I've been having, a consensus of what's going on with people, their thoughts, different ideas, their relationships, my relationships, and how things are changing and transforming. So I'm going to give you guys some time to get into this live chat so that we can have some conversation. It's like I said, it's Friday night. It's about 8:45 here Eastern Standard Time. Let me know where you're tuning in with me from, where you are, where you're going. Maybe you're on your way somewhere. Last time we had someone that was on their way to France. They was tuning in. They were at the airport. So you may be in transition. And that's a good topic too, to be in transition. Let me know if some of you are in transition. So tonight we're talking about what's really going on, where you are, where I am, where we want to be. We're talking about the transition. Let's talk about the transition tonight. Unfiltered, unhindered, not sugar coated. We're just going to talk about the real, right? And so, kind of recapping on some of the things that we talked about last Friday, it was mainly talking to the audience, the male audience, about their standards of living to be able to create an atmosphere that's conducive for their future partner, mate, wife to be. And we talked about the importance of having your home prepared, meaning that you have been thoughtful in the preparation when you are inviting someone to your home. The small little things, having bottles of water in the home, having fresh linen, having slippers at the door. We talked about those things to allow our guests to come over, to feel comfortable, and to show them and her, particularly when I'm talking to the men, that you're thinking about her. You're thinking about things that's going to make her comfortable. And also you want her to know things about you, that you are a clean person, that you are a thoughtful person, that you're kind, that you're careful to do things in a certain way, which tells a lot about your character. So tonight we're just talking a little bit about. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Like I said, we're just kicking it tonight. It's Friday night. We're just doing a recap of some things that we talked about last Friday. Preparing your home for when you have company. Are you somebody that lives a certain way, who has to get things tidy before someone show up? Or are you a person that's already prepared in a way that you can have company at any moment? So let me know where you're tuning in from. Wild Cookie. Thank you so much for coming in the live chat. Thank you. I'm sure it just popped up. Make sure you like and subscribe. This is Star Smith. This is the Menu Podcast. We're talking about things that pertain to life after divorce, things that pertain to life after trauma, after drama, after death, and how to rebuild yourself and how to get yourself moving on a forward trajectory. I talked to a lot of men this week, and some of them are in relationships. They said that they're conforming to stay in the relationship because they're afraid to move forward. And they're afraid that, thank you so much. I do. I appreciate that. And I was saying to say, a lot of men are saying they're afraid to step out of a relationship that is toxic because they're afraid that no one else would want them. So how do you guys feel about that? Let me know in the chat. Are you afraid to get out of something, a toxic relationship? And this is just one dynamic of the conversation we're having tonight. Are you afraid to get out of a toxic relationship because you're afraid that, one, somebody else won't find you as attractive? Or two, you're afraid of being vulnerable and starting over again? Or three, you're in it because you have ties, whether it's some assets or you have children together? Put it in the chat. And so, one of the reasons that this podcast came into fruition, good, you shouldn't be in a toxic relationship, but some of us are, and we don't even know it's toxic. So, we're just having some dialogue about it. But I'm glad that you're not in a toxic relationship, Wild Cookie. But if you were, would you be afraid to get out? Let's say you were in a relationship that was quote unquote toxic and you were in there for a long time. Would you continue to make that a normal relationship for you just because you're afraid of starting over? Give you a second to think about that, you know? And so some of the guys that I talked to, even on this week, they said, "Well, who would want to be in a relationship with me after all this time? I'm such and such age, you know." Or, okay, well, if I get a divorce, then the quality of my lifestyle is going to change because I'm going to have to pay child support, or I'm going to have to pay alimony, or, I have to reduce the size of the house to conform to, the financial structure that a one parent household or one person household would have. And so these gentlemen came up with a plethora of the ideas as to why they weren't ready to get out of a toxic relationship. I did not hear not one person say, you know what, I'm going to take some time to meditate on an exit plan to be able to see what is working best for me in this season. Do you guys take time to think about what works best for you in this season? Let me know. So, with the conversation that we had a lot of feedback about the brothers saying, you know what, I'm taking your advice, I'm heeding to what you're saying, I'm listening, and I'm still coming up short somewhere. So now it's time for us to look at ourselves, right? If we're doing all of the outside external things that we think we're doing to be able to be the relationship boat or conduit that is necessary for us to invite people in and on and be a part of our lives, then we have to look at, well, is something going on here, right? And so sometimes before we get into another relationship, God will allow us to spend some time with ourselves. And I know when I got divorced, and it wasn't just like, what, boom, one day it's a divorce. It's a whole lifeline of things and events that transpire after someone makes a decision to leave, separate, and then ultimately go through a divorce. So it's a painful journey, right? And at some point within that journey, and having the right people around you to help sustain you through that painful journey will also say a lot about your recovery. Let me know. Let me know if you have the a community of people or maybe one or two friends that is with you when they can hold you accountable to say, you know what, dog, you know what, homegirl, you know what, sister, you're off the boat here. Something is going on with you. We need to figure out what it is. They hold you accountable to your actions. Do you have people like that in your life? Because that's going to make the difference in how you get to the next level by who's talking to you and how you're shaping the way that you're thinking to be able to go forward and move forward in another dimension in a relationship or enjoying your singleness, you know. So with that being said, some of these gentlemen, they said, well, I'm afraid to start over because I'm over the age of 30. Or, you know what, if I start over, I'll have to think about how I'm going to downsize because it'll be a one parent or one person income household. All of these things, and I went through that as well, and I understand that concept because it's all based in fear. That's what it is. I am telling you right now that with God, all things are possible. All things are possible, but it's going to start with a healthy decision. It starts with a healthy decision, being aware that you're in something that's not suitable for your well-being. And it don't take a rocket science to figure that out. You know it's good, you know it's bad, right? And so some of the things that we allow continuously becomes our normal. So put in the chat, what's normal for you? Is yelling, screaming, fighting, is that normal for you? Have you reduced the temperature of your tolerance? That's good. Have you reduced the temperature of your tolerance to something of a lesser quality to be able to stay in a relationship? It is subconscious programming. But where does that come from? Tell me, Rick, where's that come from? To reprogram your subconscious, you got to have new information, right? That is, I'm glad you had that awareness, Edge. I'm glad you did. I'm glad. Rick, Rick, Ricky Farland, 2269, he says he's been on the edge lately, but that's not normal. So here's the question. Why are you on the edge? Sometimes we need to just kind of chill out. We need to sit down somewhere, and I have to do this myself. Okay, so what's going on with you here? You're so busy doing everything and seeing about everyone else. Well, I need to now see about myself. Okay, women, I'm talking to you. I appreciate that. So now we have a death in the family. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So now we have time that we need to grieve, right? And grieving is a natural human component to death, right? It's just like divorce. And I was talking about after going through a divorce, sometimes there's a period in between I'm okay and then going forward. And sometimes there's a period in between I'm not okay and I'm not ready to move forward. I'm not ready to accept this. Right? And so there's a process time in between all of these different decisions. But the first thing you have to do is see about yourself. Sometimes we're seeing about the spouse of the person that passed away. Sometimes it's, like you said, it's your father. So we got to make sure the other family members are stable and we become the pillars for other people. But then when you're alone by yourself, who's the pillar for you? Because we've piling so much up on our plate that now when we're alone, we have to sort out all of these things, right? And so that's not God's will for us. God's will for us to cast our cares upon the Lord because it says he cares for us. And that's a process of knowing how to do that because we're so prone to worry. Put in the chat if you're a person that's prone to worry. I used to worry so much about my children. Okay, what if this happened? Well, they can't do this and they can't go here and they can't be that. And God said to me one day, well, who are you to say what they can't do and you can't even protect yourself? How are you going to protect them? Right? There's a parental authority that I have, and I have a discernment and a wisdom to be able to caution them if there's things that God shows me to help prevent them from falling or being in a compromised position. But ultimately, God is the protector. One day at a time. God is the deliverer. God is the way. God is the carrier. Right? He makes the load light. He heals the brokenhearted. He carries the grief. Then you start to think on all the fun things that you did with your father. You start to think on all of the fun things you did when you were in a relationship with someone that when you tell the story, it doesn't have to be, oh, girl, he did this to me. Oh, girl, he did that. Yeah, oh, dog, yeah, you ain't gonna believe what girl did. You don't even have to go down that road because what you're gonna do is, and I learned this also, you don't want to set up your next relationship based on the failure of somebody else. So you want to go in the new thing talking about, what, that was the past. There is some things that, one person is going through. There's some things that I'm going through. But this is where I am right now on my healing journey. How many people talk about where they are right now? It's a process to get from some point A to point B. But the process is dependent upon you because there's many ways to get from downtown where you live to a suburban area, around 30 minutes away. There's 5 to 6 different routes to do that, right? And so we're kind of trained through our navigation to take the quickest route to get somewhere. Amen. It's been you and God, and that's how it should be. because he is the only one, and sometimes he is the one that wants to get you all by yourself so that you're able to commune with him, because there's some things in us that he has to deal with individually, right? And so if we're so involved with so many people on the phone talking, telling what's going on, so much about things that are happening to us, we can't really receive what's happening in us, you know. And so what I'm saying is, to say all of this is, there's an awareness that has to happen when we're coming out of a divorce, or we're coming into a new beginning. Someone has left, someone has transitioned, someone has passed. Now it becomes, well, who am I left now in this identity that this person, we once were, or I once was in this, and now I'm, you know, a widow, or now I'm fatherless, or now I'm a single parent. Does that mean the world has to end? No, it does not. And I am a living testimony that it does not have to end. And sometimes it takes a while to pick yourself up and allow God's grace to carry you, and to forgive yourself. Because a lot of the things that we think about were important, they weren't. Well, what am I going to do if somebody see me and they ask me about the relationship? Because people are nosy, they want to know everything about you just to go talk to somebody else about it on the phone. So guess what? I'm not talking about that. And it's okay to tell people, you know what, now is not a good time to go through that. Someone talked to me the other day, and they wanted to know, well, what happened? You seem like, you're okay, and you talk very highly of this person. Well, why'd you get divorced? Well, I'm not about to give you a whole laundry list of things that pleases your appetite to hear anything negative about what I've experienced then or now. That's not the topic of our conversation when we're trying to get to know one another. So I politely told this gentleman, you know what, that's for another conversation at another time. I'm not talking about that. Let's go forward. Let's talk about what this is now. Who are you now? Who you've become. You see what I'm saying? And so sometimes people want to keep you in the past, and they want to identify with you based on the past version of the person you were when you were either with them or with someone, or in a familiar situation that they can identify with. Once you start growing outside of that cocoon, they don't know how to deal with you. But that's not your problem. That's their problem. So I wanted to come on here, and I wanted to take some time to connect with you guys, because we did have a great response to the topic that we did last week, and I wanted to expand that. And I just wanted to talk about, in addition to those things, we're not going to keep being damaged goods to damaged goods. Right? It's some accountability that we have to take to be able to work on things ourselves, with ourselves, so that we can be better versions of ourselves to the people that we want to be in a relationship with. Whether it's a social relationship, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, we have to take the accountability to be the best people, offering the best energy to the people we come in contact with. How many times do you feel, what, I'm having a bad day. I'm off. It's off today. And then you get on the phone, or you get in traffic, and you cursing somebody out, yelling at them because they didn't stop, or they're moving too slow. And I do this sometimes. They're moving. Would you come on, like, hurry up? The light is green. It's like, whoa, 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 calm down. Start, like, where are you trying to go so fast? Nowhere. Just relax. You're going to get there. But sometimes it takes a little bit more grace to be able to understand and put your feet in someone else's shoes, because we're so busy thinking about everything is all about us. Woe is me. Woe is me. I can't do this. I can't do that. They did this to me. They did that to me. So many people want to hear the story of what somebody did to you, but not to help you, but to talk about it, to talk about you to other people. So don't give people the pleasure of doing that. Take the accountability of your responsibility of healing and taking one day, one step at a time. Just like Ricky mentions, one day at a time. Whatever experiences that we have, God gives us the time to process those things so that we can make healthier decisions, so that we can see the lessons inside of the problem and catch the awareness so that we can change and make life better and turn or go on a different trajectory so that we can have a better quality of an experience of life. And so that we can also be a better experience to other people, right? And so relationships, is one plethora of topics that we have on this channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. But I was also talking about the fact that this came about is because after the divorce, I felt like I needed to talk. I was so muffled and I was so buried in an identity that somebody had created that I lived through. And so after they left, and I have all of this stuff on my plate to unfold, you lose your identity in somebody else, and you don't even realize it because you've been in it for so long. And so rebuilding yourself according to who God says that you are and who you have intuitively become, through the course of time, being able to manifest yourself in that outward expression, that takes a lot of work. And that takes a lot of dedication and it takes a lot of time. You know what I'm saying? And I just wanted to go along with this comment so that I'm engaging with you guys as well. Ricky says it's been an interesting year. She's definitely in isolation. She reconnected with her family last year and felt heavy. Death energy. What do you guys think about that? I think one thing that we have to understand is we don't have to connect with nobody yet. If we're not ready spiritually to be able to combat another energy that's more dominant to ours that could either suppress us or depress us, it's not time to connect there. You have to create a boundary and allow yourself the opportunity to feel the Spirit of God to its fullness so that wherever you go and whoever you're with, their spirit cannot dominate your spirit. And you don't feel that heaviness. You can leave that right at their door. Okay, girl, thank you so much for the invite, but I got to go. Quick. And it's okay to say that and it's okay to do that. Don't feel obligated to stay in a lesser than higher energy just because it's quote unquote your family. Jesus says, well, who is my family? Then he said, well, he that doeth the will of my Father. And if you're a believer, it says to be absent in the body is to be present with the Lord. So it depends on the people and the subconscious energy that you're around also. You never want to be in something that feels dark or death or suppression or depression or any lower natured feeling, especially when you're trying to resurrect yourself out of something into a higher, more conscious spirit of God. You don't want to stay buried in the casket with the loved one that you just put away. You want to be able to walk out and feel like, okay, he's in the hands of God, or this is now in the hands of the Lord, and I did everything that I could on earth in this iteration of who I am in that relationship, and now I can move forward. It's all about how you think about the thing. Somebody was telling me the other day, he says, and he may be on here, he's a subscriber and he's a good dear friend of mine. He said, when I get ready to preach my trial message, I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z. I said, well, why is it a trial message? If God called you and he gave you the message, who's on trial here? You don't need anybody to approve you because the Bible's already made it very clear. If I called you, says God, I've approved you. I've chosen you. I've ordained you before the world began to do this. So It's a lot of things that we get involved with that is the mind and the thought of men and not of God. You don't have to preach a trial message for somebody to be able to approve you to preach the gospel. Well, if God gave you the word, then he's already approved you because he called you and he gave you the revelation to speak on the thing that you're talking about. So what can man say to you? Right? But we become so conditioned to be approved and to have confirmation and affirmation from another human being who's just a human being. Right? And so you have to learn how to take the reins of your own life and get into your driver's seat. Okay? So we're talking about a few things here based on the comments in the chat, but we're also making a point that after death, after divorce, after trauma, after change, after transition, there is life of a great quality still available for you. If you want it, if you want to build it, if you want to design it, it's available to all of us. And it takes time to get reacquainted with who you are. We talked on the last a couple episodes ago about younger men liking to date older women. And then we had one older woman, mature woman. She said, "You know what? She said I attract younger men that have mommy wound trauma." I said, "Wow, that's really interesting of you to know your point of attraction with different men." Make sure you like and subscribe because I don't want to lose this conversation. So many people coming into the chat. But I want to acknowledge you, but I also want to continue with the conversation. She said, "I attract these men who have mother trauma wounds and they're younger." I said, "Wow, that's interesting." And you know this based on what? She said the first thing a young man say, and they're always, and she's a beautiful woman. She's, close to 50. You wouldn't tell, you wouldn't know. And she said, well, the first thing that they tell me is the things that they went through with their mother. I said, wow. I said, so how do you change your point of attraction if that thing is still in you and you're vibrating that for these young men to be able to get some type of healing through your energy? She says, I'm working on that. So when you know your point of attraction in a relationship, whether it be romantic or whether it just be the energy that's, conducive to attracting the opposite sex, you have to know how to manage that. You just can't be reckless and a loose cannon because you have the ability to track a certain quality of a person or attract a certain a younger version of someone who you would be in a relationship with, but they're of a different age. You can't be reckless in that because that's your point of attraction, especially if they're not healed. And you know that you're attracting people that's healed or not healed. You'll know immediately. The signs will come off rip. Okay, yeah, this is a red flag. Let me put this on ice for a second. People blaming you. They don't want to take accountability for their own actions. Okay, this is a red flag. I got to put this on ice because this can go real bad quick. This can go somewhere we don't want it to go. So let me give you some space and I'm going to take me some space. Are we saying that kind of thing to be responsible for our own actions and our own healing? And it takes a lot of maturity to be able to do that. Another friend I had, he may be on here. If he is, I'm going to bring him into live because he has a great perspective. He said, I was dating a young lady and, I ended up having a baby with another woman and she told me to go ahead and marry her. I said, oh. I said, well, you were having sexual relations with two women at the same time? Well, yeah. I said, well, how does that, who does that? Is that something that's normal for you? Well, yeah, where you been? Where age you living? Everybody's doing that. I said, no, everybody is not having sex with multiple people. And if they are, that's a whole nother level of trauma that you're dealing with because you're taking on the spirits of all these people that you're laying in the bed with. And so he was saying, oh, I just got to get off the phone. This is my homeboy, so it's no, relationship in that regard. So we talk about everything. And he was saying, well, I'm going to get off the phone with you because you just, you antiquated, you too traditional, etc., etc. I said, bro, how are you managing yourself and then managing being in the bed with several women? You're chaotic. Your mind is chaotic because you have multiple spiritual encounters with several people and then you're trying to go home and manage your family. Like that's there's no alignment there. So all of that to say, sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes we're looking for something, and even myself, we get into the wrong relationship and we know it's wrong and we stay in it because we're comfortable. So now it's time to raise the temperature of our consciousness to go to a place where, okay, this is uncomfortable, but this is best for me. Sometimes being uncomfortable is best for you because you're setting your temperature at another degree to be acquainted with something better or different or God sent, right? And so I wanted to come on here tonight to kind of connect with you, as well as thank everybody who liked and subscribed and who contribute to our last conversation, and all of you that are contributing to this conversation. I appreciate all of you. There are so many things that I want to talk about, but the time is running ahead of me, so I'm not going to be able to get to it all tonight. But with that being said, there's so many things that God is allowing to change in our lives, and we have to be able to go with the degree of change, because there's some things that we're asking for and it requires change. But if we're so afraid that, oh my god, this is not the way that it used to be, then how are you ever going to get to the next level? You're not. You're not. Sometimes it's just taking a breath. You know what? Okay. This is probably really good for me. I need to see what it is that God see about this, and I need to get this understanding. Or you know what? I need to probably change my direction here, or I need to learn something new about myself or this environment. And because God is such a good, gracious God, He's going to allow you to be in some things, but He's going to reveal a lot of things to you about people, because not only is He working on us individually, He's working on them too. So you never want to discount people. Through the divorce, my ex-husband's family, they didn't want to talk to me at all. I said, well, why don't talk to me? I ain't do none of them. He had the problem. He left. So you have that much power to influence all these other people to not have a relationship with me, because you are so broken in your identity that you have to allow sides to be chosen because you can't maintain a standard of an individual who has to take accountability for their own actions, you know, and vice versa. You have to allow people to be who they are, right? I can't say, "Oh, don't be friends with her because she did this." Well, you're 40 years old. How am I going to encourage you and influence you to be friends or not be friend, or befriend a friend based on my experience with you? Like who raised you, right? There's a lot of different things that we were taught that shaped our subconscious, that got us all in a bad place. And so this is an opportunity. This is a time where God is shifting the things in our lives, and He's turning it upside down, and He's bringing new people into our existence so that we can get on the path and the trajectory that He has for us. So make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'm going to tune off here. But like I said, we had a great conversation. We talked about a recap of our last time we were on here live. The gentleman we talked, they came in and they participated in that live conversation. They wanted to know, how to entreat a young lady or a woman that comes over to our home. What are some things that we can offer them? What are some things that we can do to make the environment comfortable? What are some things that we can do to make it conducive to the idea of marriage? We're trying to change a lot of our image, that we're coming out of one lifestyle into another lifestyle. So we talked about those things. And even today we talked about how to transition when you've lost a loved one. When not only have you come out of a divorce or you're coming out of a broken relationship, you've come out of somebody passing away that you love dearly. How do you start over? And so the couple of things that I shared is just becoming aware of one, where you are. One of the persons, Ricky, she commented in the chat. She just was feeling off. She was on edge, and that was very bold and vulnerable of her to share that. A lot of us hide things, right? And we don't want to tell people, you know what, I'm on edge today. I'm not feeling good. But you're communicating your emotions, which is very healthy. And so I appreciate her saying that. So becoming aware of where you are. Two, making a decision to handle as best you can what you can do, and then placing the rest of the responsibility on God because He cared for you. Casting your cares is what it's called. That's how we get through transitions. That's how we get through life. That's how we get through change. Becoming a new version of ourselves to say, I'm not lost in that identity. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're just recapping this conversation. We're about to get off here in a second. But re-identifying yourself is important because now you have the cards in your deck to be able to say, well, this is who I am. That is who I was, and that didn't define me. How many people you've met, and I've talked about this, when you say, tell me a little bit about yourself. The first thing they do is tell you a title. Well, I'm a CEO, or you know what, I'm a mother of three, or you know what, I'm a stylist, or I'm a journalist. Wait a minute. I said, tell me about you. Not tell me about what you do. And so many times people define themselves by what they do. Well, that's not who you are. It's a part of who you are that probably you've chosen to express in some degree as doing. But what you do is not who you are. You know what? I'm a confident person. I attract people with my energy. I go out into the world and I make people happy. I'm a light. I shine bright wherever I go. I make people feel happy just being around the warmth of my vibration. Like, that's who you are. Now, you don't have to tell people to that degree, but you need to know something about yourself that you can start to incorporate the I am that identity, because you don't want to stay stuck in the past of somebody else's identity of being who they wanted you to be. I'm your girl, Star Smith. I'm just kicking it real with you. It's Friday night. I hope you guys are having a great start to the weekend. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'm going to sign off here so that I can sign back on with you tomorrow. God's will be done in all of your lives. You are on the fast track going to every place that God has prepared for you. There is no limit. There is no stopping. There is no ceiling that you cannot break through, go over, climb through. Everything that you desire is waiting for you, and this is your time. This is your life. This is your way of doing those things, and you're going to become the best person that God has prepared in this season for you to be. Redesign your menu. It's your menu. It's called the Menu Podcast because it's redesigning your life that fits you in every season. Sometimes you want a different palette. Sometimes you want to experience new things. Sometimes you may want the same thing. But it's you taking the reins and driving your car and getting out of the back seat to the driver's seat. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Make sure you like and subscribe. This is your girl, Star Smith. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.